The approach to the Accumulation Site headland took 2 hours and 14 minutes. I tracked the interval the entire transit. What I expected, based on every previous approach to a significant site in this investigation. The interval intensifying as we closed distance. Sharpening the way the device sharpened during the coastal site approach, the way the rook signal strengthened as the Morwenna moved over the coordinate, the signal building toward the site, the system broadcasting approach, the investigators drawn in by a rhythm that gets louder as they get closer. That did not happen. The interval ran at the same character from the Morwenna's anchorage the entire way. Not stronger, not weaker, not more localized. The same 11-second count through the hull, through the deck, through the soles of my boots. Steady and undifferentiated. Present the way the horizon is present, not directing us toward it, simply there. I documented this carefully because the absence of the expected intensification behavior is itself information. The site is not calling us. The interval is not a beacon from the accumulation site pulling investigators toward a record that needs to be read. The interval is a network state. It runs everywhere the network runs. We are inside it now in a way we were not inside it before the coastal configuration completed. This is the difference Marin described. The last time we came to the accumulation site, we were investigators following evidence toward a record that had been waiting for us. The interval pulled us. The device directed us. The investigation led. This time we know where we are going and why. The site is not leading. We are returning. Hannah anchored the Morwenna in the same offshore position as the Season 3 approach, approximately 300 meters from the headland. The same overcast sky, the same gray-green water, the same pale cliff face with the accumulation site building integrated into the stone above the tidal shelf. We took the launch in, Hannah, Marin, myself. The tidal shelf was exposed. The same flat expanse of pale rock below the cliff, the carved marks covering approximately 30 square meters, the worn depression at the center where the access condition required the placement of a hand. We had been here before. We knew the terrain. What I did not know until we were on the shelf was whether the access condition would apply. Last time, placement of hand in the depression activated the access. The device stopped when contact was made. The pulse locked. The path to the accumulation site opened. A procedure, a threshold the system required us to demonstrate before it recognized us. Marin had said, "The site will know the difference." I had understood that as a prediction about what would happen at the building, the record book, the new entry, the reading that closes the case. I had not considered whether it applied to the access condition itself. I walked to the depression. I crouch in front of it. The worn hollow in the stone, palm-sized, smooth from repeated contact over a very long period, the concentric marks inside it, I have never had time to study carefully. I study them now for a moment. Rings of use, essentially. The record of every hand that has been placed here across whatever span of time this site has been in operation. Thousands of contacts, if the depth of the wear is any indication. I place my hand in the hollow. The device does not stop. It has been silent since the acknowledgement tone on the Morwenna's deck. Silence is its current state. The device not stopping in the depression is not a deviation. The device is already silent. What I notice instead, nothing changes because nothing needs to change. The interval is already running. The access is not gated this time. The path is not closed. The system has already recognized the investigators. At the assessment pause at the coastal site, at the offshore structure confirmation, at the completion of the configuration. The worn depression is an access protocol for investigators who have not yet been recognized. We have been recognized. I lift my hand from the hollow. Hannah is watching me. I say, "It was for then, not for now." She nods. She already thought so. Marin has already started toward the cliff path. The path to the accumulation site from the tidal shelf runs up through the cliff face. Not a formal path, a series of footholds and ledges that become apparent when you know to look for them. We found it the first time by following the device's direction. This time I find it without the device, from memory and from the stone's own logic, where the cliff face offers purchase, where the handholds are worn in the same way the depression is worn. The building is where it was. Single entrance, cliff integrated, no windows, the stone of the building continuous with the headland behind it. The same architectural fact that struck me the first time. This was not built onto the cliff. It was built from it. The entrance is not closed or locked. It was not closed the first time either. The accumulation site does not gate access with a door. The access condition was at the tidal shelf. What is inside is for whoever reaches it. I step in, one table, one record book, open, the same as before. The room is the same dimensions, the same single source of light from a cleft in the cliff face above that lets in the gray sky. The table is in the same position. The record book is open to a page that was not the current page when we left this room at the end of Season 3. I approach the table. The record book is open to a new page, not new as in recently added. The book's pages are the same non-paper material as the watch number 1 photograph, the same pre-registry substrate, permanent and non-degrading. New as in, this page was not written when we left this place. The pages before it were filled with entries in multiple scripts across centuries. This page has one entry. The entry is in English. I look at it before I read it. The handwriting is not a handwriting I recognize, not O'Connor's, not Hannah's, not any hand I have documented in the investigation. It is a clean, even script that looks neither old nor new, the way handwriting looks when the substrate it is written on does not age. The ink, or whatever marks the substrate, is the same amber color as the guidelines in the coastal fitting. Amber. The same system layer as the placement guidance, not the deep red of the tidal shelf marks, not the standard archive ink. The accumulation site entry was written by the same source that illuminated the fitting geometry. I read the entry. I am going to transcribe it exactly as written because accuracy matters more here than anything else. Case 8. Condition. The return circuit was closed at the marking site by 2 listeners and an unregistered witness. The consequence mark confirmed. The record is received. Classification confirmed listener, both investigators. Confirmed not by registry but by function. The condition was present before contact. The contact did not create the condition. The first receipt has not left the system. The signal that returns through the current investigators is the signal carried by the first listener. The circuit that closed at the marking site is the same circuit the first listener opened. The opening and the closing are separated by the full span of the network's existence. What the circuit closing reveals, the first listener is still present in the system because the signal that originated with them has not yet completed its return. When the return completes, the first listener's record closes. The key labeled 47 was made before the archive. It was carried by the first listener before it was carried by the current investigator. The second key was made with it and held at the primary grid against the return. Both have now been present at the marking site. The first listener is not a historical figure. The first listener is a current condition. They are accumulating because the return is not yet complete. Case 8. The return is not yet complete. The case remains open. I read the entry twice. I step back from the table. I read it a third time from the position I am standing in to make sure distance does not change what I am reading. It does not change. Hannah is beside me. She has read it with me on the second pass. She is very still. Marin is in the doorway. She did not come fully into the room. She is reading the entry from the threshold. I look at the key labeled 47 in my jacket pocket, the key made before the archive, the key carried by the first listener before it was carried by me, the key whose origin I have been unable to account for since episode 7 of this investigation. I think about O'Connor's journal notation. Returned it. Not enough. The key returned to the system in 1931, entered the system at some earlier point, before O'Connor, before the archives node protocol, before the catalog card system, and before that, carried by the first listener who made it before any of this existed, who is still in the system, who is still accumulating because the signal has not completed its return. The circuit that closed at the marking site is the same circuit the first listener opened. I opened one end, or I closed one end. The distinction matters and the record book does not resolve it. I am one of 2 points in a loop that began before I was born. Hannah says very quietly, "The case remains open." I say I know. She says, "It says the first listener's record closes when the return completes." She looks at the entry. The return is not yet complete, which means there is something else, something that closes the circuit fully. I think about the untranslatable portion of the consequence mark statement, the result that the circuit reveals. The present tense condition that becomes visible when the first 2 stages are met. We met those stages at the coastal marking site. We closed the circuit at the marking site. The consequence mark confirmed it, but the case is still open. The consequence mark confirmed a condition, not a completion. The circuit closed, and the closing revealed something that was already true, but the closing is not the end. It is the revelation. The end is something else, something the record book has just said is still pending. I look at the table, the record book open to this entry. Below the entry, the page continues. The rest of the page is blank. But at the very bottom of the page, at the lower margin, in the same amber hand, the second key has not yet been returned. I look at that line for a long time. The second key, the one in the canvas bag, the one that was altered by the offshore structure, the one made at the same time as key 47, as a pair intended for simultaneous use, the one that has been at the accumulation site, in the drawer of this table, for an unknown period before we arrived and took it. It came from here, and it has not yet been returned. I look at the table drawer. Hannah looks at the table drawer. Marin steps fully into the room for the first time. She says, "Don't open it yet." The interval runs. 11 seconds through the cliff stone, through the floor of this room, through the soles of my boots, through the same continuous stone that runs from this building down through the cliff face to the tidal shelf below. I look at the canvas bag in my hand. I look at the drawer, the amber line at the bottom of the page. The second key has not yet been returned.